It's not how you start, it's how you finish. What's up, friends? I'm Zach Joachim, and this is On the Horn, and we're going to do our utmost to unpack a 89-75 VCU win over Loyola Chicago that has a lot to unpack in it. This was a very strange game. It was a 9 o'clock tip, which I love. So it's 12:30 right now at the Siegel Center as I'm recording this. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Chris Kowalczyk, who's over here on the opposite media table from me right now, working on his post-game notes. I don't know if you guys can see this. It's probably very difficult to read upside down. Is that the wrong one? Nope, here's mine. Can I even do this from this camera angle? We're gonna try and position it here. Yeah, so that says Zach Joachim, only person who likes 9 p.m. games, on my VCU basketball media table placard today. I'm honored. CK, you're the man. I do love the 9 p.m. tips. This is my Super Bowl. I'm a night owl. And Phil Martelli told me good morning in the or happy middle of the day or whatever it was in the post-game presser, which was fun. I will point people before we get into the game to Phil Martelli's post-game presser. It had some really beautiful words and perspective about coaches versus cancer, and what it means to him and his family. He and his wife Megan had some bracelets made at their wedding, and that it's like a little orange bracelet that Phil said he wears like every day to help raise money for coaches versus cancer, and donate to the cause. They have a family member who's a breast cancer survivor. My mom's breast cancer survivor. There's, I'm sure everyone watching this video has had their family, if they haven't personally been affected by cancer, then their family has been in some way. So it's an awesome cause. A huge shout out to, the coaches around the country and the programs around the country that honor it every year. They wore suits and everything for the 2 games this week. And I always love that. And it's an awesome week in college basketball for a phenomenal cause. Obviously, I always think of Jim Valvano. This week, I'm sure a lot of people do. So go watch his press conference. I just posted it on Twitter, and it's on our YouTube right now, because he had some really beautiful stuff to say there. VCU won 89-75 by 14 points, which sounds relatively comfortable. It was not. This was a wild game. And Phil Martelli and Terrence Hill Jr. said it in the postgame presser that they all kind of felt it in shoot-around. Like, the shoot-around was lackluster. The energy just wasn't there for them out the gates. I think the 9 p.m. tip was part of that. Like, Phil said he doesn't love them, and he says that maybe kind of got the guys with how late it was. One would think that the home team, versus the road team has an advantage there, but Chicago's in Central Time, right? Am I tripping? I'm gonna have to look that up. So I don't know, maybe it affects Loyola Chicago a little less for that reason. I might be wrong there. I've been to Chicago, I should know that. Anyway, Terrence Hill Jr. had a career high 24 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. He was outstanding tonight, really helped will VCU back into this game after they fell behind early. Jadrian Tracy, 14 points. Tyrell Ward, 15 points. In 23-45, he is now a foundational piece of this rotation, which is awesome to see. After he went long stretches in the middle of the season without playing, I think the 600-plus day layoff of not playing college basketball for him after he sat out last year with LSU obviously had an effect with him. But his energy was phenomenal and really helped flip this game. And because we have to get into how this started. So VCU was down 8-0 at the under 16 timeout in the first half. They just completely sleptwalked through the early proceedings. I've never seen Phil Martelli that hot. Jadrian and Terrence and Tyrell kind of laughed in the postgame presser when I asked that question. I was like, have y'all ever seen Phil that hot? I'm sure they've seen him get into him at times when the energy is not right before, but that might have been the angriest that any of us have ever seen him. A clipboard or a whiteboard or whatever went flying. I don't know if that came from Phil. It might have come from Jimmy or someone else on the sideline, but he was irate because VCU started terribly. So it was 8-0 at the under 16, and it ballooned to as bad as 24-9 after Miles Rubin got his own rebounds and converted the putback off glass with 10:45 to play in the first half. Rubin was outstanding. He had 21 points, 10 rebounds. He didn't have a block, which is weird because he's such a good rim protector and he had a great game, but he didn't do the thing that he does best. And VCU, a lot of people want to talk about this team's switching defensively. And that's a totally fair conversation because they adjusted that. They switched really aggressively, and teams have been able to exploit it and get mismatches. And that was a big part of how Loyola jumped out to a lead early in this game. They got easy buckets by getting the switches that they needed. And they stopped switching as much. And they started staying with matchups on the perimeter. Terrence said that, Phil said that, and that certainly helped them rebound defensively. Rebound, keyword there, because that was another thing that they were not doing well early. It was 22-8 Loyola Chicago on the glass after the first half, which is one of the worst rebounding performances in a half I can remember seeing from VCU. I think it was 22-6 at one point, and then they got a couple late there in the first half, and it only ended up 36-33. Loyola Chicago rebounding advantage by the end of the game. So what's the math there? 22. Loyola had 14 rebounds in the second half. VCU had 25. So they were much better on the glass in the second half. VCU had 12 offensive rebounds in the second half after they didn't have any in the first half. So the effort and just the attention to detail in terms of boxing out that was not there in the first half was very much there in the second half. They cleaned that up, and they cleaned things up defensively, right? It was 46-46 at halftime, and we'll get into how this game turned around in the first half in a second here. But VCU held Loyola Chicago to 29 points in the second half. Ramblers shot 11 of 29 from the field after intermission. That's 37.9%, and 3 of 13 from three. That's 23.1%. So VCU was so much better defensively in the second half. Everything kind of flipped. The moment that I thought this game turned, like I asked Phil about this in the post-game presser. He obviously doesn't want anyone to get a T, but he had one earlier in the season. I forget what game that was. Maybe it was St. Peter's, that when they were kind of sleepwalking a little bit, helped get them going. And technical fouls can sometimes be good things, right? So after the under 12, they're down 24-9. That's the largest lead for Loyola Chicago. And then Mike Bell catch and shoot tray in the right corner, assist by Ahmad Noel. And, I don't love this call because I think refs are so quick with it when someone makes a three right in front of the opposing bench. And Loyola Chicago got one themselves. I think it was Tavares in the second half who made a three right in front of the VCU bench and did the same thing that Bell did, which was turn around and talk to him. It's okay.
Sorry.
No worries. Y'all do what you gotta do. And so Mike turned around and talked some shit to the bench, and he got teed up for it. Tavares did the same thing in the second half. I don't love that call. I know that they do it all the time in college basketball because it's a product of the bench talking shit to the shooter, like while they're trying to get their shot off. And so, if it's going both ways, I'm not sure it's fair to just tee up the shooter. I feel like if they're going to do that, then there should be more attention to detail from the refs of teeing up benches when they're talking to a shooter. And so Mike got teed up. I think it was a positive thing for VCU because the atmosphere in this place totally switched. And all of a sudden, VCU in the Siegel Center was angry. And they were into this game. And Loyola hit the free throw for 25-12. But I think the momentum shift that VCU got from that was really valuable. A couple possessions later, Noel transition lob to Barry Evans for an alley-oop. And all of a sudden, this place was on fire. It's 25-16 with 9:07 to play in the first half. They keep chipping away. Tyrell Ward, outstanding skip pass to Brandon Jennings in the right corner with 7:30 to play in the first half. Brandon hit the three. That made it 30-21 with 7:30 to play in the period. And then VCU really got going, right? And it was Terrence Hill who roared to the bench and the stands a few times. He has very much become the leading offensive figure for this team. When they need a bucket, they looked for Terrence to create off the dribble. And hit a three, a catch and shoot on the left wing for 35-26. That was a Djokovic assist. And then again, this one was incredibly deep. It was over like a step in front of the logo there, or a little bit like to the side of the logo. And that made it 37-29 with 5:15 to play in the first half. And then Terrence Hill drive, kick to Ward on the left wing. He hit a catch and shoot three. It's 39-32 with 4 minutes to play in the first half. And this place was loud and into the game. And VCU had very much flipped the momentum at that point. And how many 4-point plays does Terrence Hill have this season? I think that's like 6 or 7. CK, is that like 6 or 7 4-point plays for Terrence this season? Is that like 6 or 7 4-point plays for Terrence this season? It's a lot, right? It's a lot. I don't know if there's a program record for that. He's got to be pushing it. Okay. Not something they track in terms of a program record, but I would bet money that Terrence Hill is, if he doesn't have the lead for 4-point plays by an individual in a VCU season, then he's close to it. Nasty behind the back dribble, hit the three on the right wing, got fouled, roared to the crowd, mean mugged a little bit. That was a really fun moment. Hit the free throw for a 4-point play, and VCU was really back into it at that point. Now it's 39-36 with 3:20 to play in the first half. And then Tyrell Ward, man, again, just a huge shout out to the spark of energy these provided this team off the bench. VCU 51-15 edge and bench points in this game. They really wore Loyola down. I think that was a big part of the resurgence in the second half, as Ramblers just didn't have the same depth that VCU did. When your leading scorer is coming off the bench, that's obviously a big part of it, but Terrence and Tyrell are the big reason why that bench tally is what it is, right? And Ward had 3 consecutive buckets to close the half. One of them, I think, was my favorite play of the game, where he had a steal, and then the ball was going out of bounds, and it hit the ref, and careened back in bounds, and that enabled Tyrell to go coast to coast and finish off glass pretty easy to tie things up at 44, like 30 seconds before halftime. I think it's the same rule in the NFL, right? The ref is part of the field of play, and if the ball is, and in soccer too. And if the ball, I think sometimes they stop play and it's like a drop ball in soccer, but in this case, it very much helped out Tyrell, and the ref tried to get out of the way, but he's part of the field of play, and that's the rule. And then Ward another finish off glass for 46 up going into halftime, and the momentum had shifted and VCU got control. Early on in the second half, a couple buckets from Barry Evans right before the stoppage, Zach Joachim bucket, and a JJ and Tracy tray, and they were up 59-52, and Loyola Chicago never really got back to, was able to regain control and threaten again. That lead hung around 10 points for a while in the second half before VCU really extended it and ended up winning by 14, their largest margin. So Loyola Chicago covered because the line, I think, opened at 20.5. But the way this game started, if you're VCU, you will take a 14-point win and run with it all day, right? Like I said, 51-15 edge and bench points. 15 to 6 points off turnovers. VCU was able to disrupt defensively, which isn't something that they've done a whole lot of this year, right? Is get live ball turnovers and get going in transition. But Loyola Chicago 13 turnovers tonight. VCU 15 points off them, and a 14-1 edge in fast break points. So they were able to get going in transition, especially in that second half. Ward had a catch and shoot 3 on the left corner off a really cool inbounds play. What was that? With like 15 minutes to play in the second half, when I think Brandon Jennings inbounded to Barry Evans in the lane, and Barry leapt up to catch it, and in one motion passed to Tyrell on the wing, and he hit the 3. That made it 62-55. And like I said, VCU just kind of kept him at arm's length the rest of the way, and ends up, what are some more plays down the stretch here? It got down to 83-75 with 2:17 to play. Like, Loyola was still kind of, hanging around on the periphery of striking distance, but VCU got stops down the stretch. Terrence Hill driving layup off glass with his right, 85-75 with 1:15 to play. And then some free throws from Terrence and Brandon sealed the deal, and they end up winning by their largest lead. Anything else on the stat sheet here? VCU, Michael Bell and Zach Joachim battled some foul trouble today, and I thought it was really interesting. They played Barry Evans at the 5 in like a really small lineup, Phil did, for stretches of that second half, and it was really effective, which isn't something that we've seen a whole lot this year, and I don't think it's something that Phil wants to do a whole lot. He was kind of forced into that based on the foul trouble, but it worked. Barry, I thought, had a really good game. Again, 6 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds. He's better on the glass than that. Not one of his big rebounding games, but he continues to affect the game in a lot of ways for me outside of the scoring department. Brandon Jennings game, right? 9 points, 4 steals. He's 15 over on the plus minus. I think that's because he set the tone for them defensively, especially in that second half. He also had 4 rebounds, 4 or 5 at the free throw line. Like I said, Tyrell 15 points, an efficient 15 points, 5 of 7 from the field. Jadrian has really gotten going offensively lately. He's 14 points. He's 2 of 5 from 3, 4 of 8 from the field. And VCU ends up winning by 14 in a wild game. Loyola 40-28 edge in the paint. Like I said, Ruben ended up with 21 points, 18 rebounds. Xavier Amos was really good again. He had 18 points and 8 rebounds. And look, Loyola's been bad this year. They're the bottom of the A10. They came into this game, what was their record? Were they 5-16? I think they were 5-16, 1-8 in A10 play. But they've had a lot of injuries. And Phil said that Drew Valentine told him, that yesterday was the first day that they really got in a full practice with all of their guys, like all season. And that is true, right? Like, this is not the Loyola Chicago team today that has struggled so mightily all season. They are better than that. And I think they're going to play some teams like they did VCU tough over this back half of the A10 schedule now that they're fully healthy. But after all that, VCU's won 5 in a row. And I know a lot of people want to say that the at-large hopes are dead, but they're not. Joe Lunardi had them in his next 4 out. When he released the bracket today, they obviously can't afford any bad losses, but they've won 5 in a row now. You get Fordham on Tuesday. I think Fordham's lost 4 in a row. It's a road trip, but you obviously should win that game. I feel stupid for writing earlier in the week that VCU, kind of was due for a comprehensive blowout win where they played, a full 40 minutes on both sides of the ball earlier in the week. Looking at the metrics, that was the suggestion, that Loyola Chicago was a team that you could do that against at the Siegel Center. But like Phil said, they're getting healthy right now, and it very much wasn't that tonight. It was a battle. But they've won 5 in a row. They hold sole possession of 3rd place in the A-10. Only a half game back of Mason right now. I'm not sure who Mason plays tomorrow. But if they were to lose, then they'd be tied. And Dayton got destroyed by SLU today. And so I think it's St. Joseph's that's in fourth place right now. So there's a bit of a gap developing there between the A-10's top 3 teams in SLU. Well, there's a gap between SLU and everyone else, to be fair, right now. They look the absolute class of the A-10. They're phenomenal against Dayton tonight. And then there's a gap between VCU and Mason and everyone else, it looks like, in the conference standings right now. So Rams have won 5 in a row. They're 16-6, 7-2 in the A-10. And it was a topsy-turvy game, but they ended up getting the job done with a really good second half. Outscored Loyola Chicago 43-29 after intermission, after a really high-scoring first half. VCU ended up leading by 19-49. There was only 1 lead change and 2 ties in this game. So a tale of 2 halves, although I'd say VCU really got it going at that 10-minute mark of the first half. And this is 16 minutes. I should cut off on the horn, but there's a lot to unpack in this game. So that's why this one has been as long as it is. I'm Zach Joachim. This is On the Horn. Y'all rock. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Rams have won 5 in a row. They're 16-6, 7-2 in the A-10, and they move to Fordham on Tuesday. And if they can win that one, this place should be rocking next Friday against Dayton. Thank y'all for tuning in. I've got the game story online here in a second, and I'll get takeaways online tomorrow morning. Also, everyone come out to the women's game on Sunday. It's the Support Her game. Awesome cause. They're playing Richmond. Phenomenal Richmond team. They're trying to break the attendance record that's been a little over 6,000 the last 2 years when they've done the Support Her game. And that should be a fun atmosphere. I know it's going to snow, but everyone come out to the Siegel Center at noon on Sunday for a really fun game between the VCU and Richmond women. I love watching that Richmond women's team play. Erin Roussel is phenomenal. Maggie Dugan is phenomenal. And yeah, thank y'all for tuning in. I'll see you Sunday. I'll probably do an On the Horn after the women's game. So yeah, I'll see you then. Thanks, friends.